Dear learners, today we will discuss a very important and interesting topic, health hazards. First, let us understand what is meant by health. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being and does not consist only of the absence of disease or infirmity. So here we see that health is a multidimensional concept which involves overall well-being of a person. Now, if this is what health is, then what is meant by health hazards? Health hazard is a danger to health resulting from exposure to environmental pollutants such as asbestos or ionizing radiations, or to a lifestyle choice such as cigarette smoking or chemical abuse. There are two major types of health hazards. They are environmental hazards and occupational hazards. Let us look at them. The first one is environmental hazards. This encompasses threats like pollution, the natural disasters such as storms and earthquakes, and there are around 5 types of environmental hazards. For example, the chemical hazards, physical hazards, mechanical hazards, biological hazards and the psychological hazards. The second one is occupational hazards. The occupational hazards arise due to occupation in which a person is engaged. It is a danger to health resulting from exposure to environmental pollutants such as asbestos or ionizing radiations. They cause visible changes in the body such as decrease in pulmonary function, leading to symptoms in exposed employees, for example, the shortness of breath. The effect of harmful substances vary with the mode of entry of the pollutants into the body. There are 4 main ways that harmful agents can enter your body. The first one is through breathing. When you inhale the harmful chemicals or when you inhale the harmful agents, then it comes into your body. The second one is swallowing. When you swallow it, then again it comes into your body. Or it can also come from another place, that is the skin. If the chemical is absorbed, falls on your skin, and if it is absorbed by the skin, then this is another way in which it comes into your body. The fourth one is through cuts or injection. For example, if there is a cut or a wound on your skin, or if something is injected into your body, then such harmful agents can enter your body. Let us now discuss them one by one. The first one is breathing or inhalation. You can breathe in chemicals, some that you cannot even see or smell. Diseases like tuberculosis are spread by breathing in germs that are in the air. The second one is swallowing or ingestion. Workers can swallow chemicals in different ways. You can swallow chemicals along with your food if you do not wash your hands properly after handling chemicals. In dusty areas, you can swallow chemicals such as lead or asbestos particles that are there in the air or that land on your food or drink. Some diseases such as hepatitis A are spread by eating food that is contaminated with hepatitis A virus. Some germs enter into your body when you eat or touch your mouth without washing your hands properly. The third one is through skin or absorption. Many chemicals and some types of radiations can pass right through your skin. Some types of chemicals, germs or radiations cause illnesses just by coming into contact with the skin. For example, polychlorinated biphenyls, which are a group of toxic chemicals used in transformers, can cause a painful skin condition or skin rash called the chlorins. Now the fourth one is through cuts or injection. Chemicals or germs can also pass through your skin if you get a cut or get struck with some sharp object such as needle. So now let us discuss how these health hazards can affect us. The effect of health hazards can be discussed in four major ways. One is the acute effect, the second one is the chronic effect, third one is the local effect, and fourth one is the systemic effect. Acute effects happen when some hazards they affect the workers soon after they are exposed. Symptoms that show up quickly are called acute effects. Acute effects of a chemical exposure such as a headache may go away with when one gets some fresh air. For example, skin burn from being splashed with acid, vomiting or cramps from food poisoning, fainting due to working outside in the heat for a long time, or fatigue from shift work. These are all examples of acute effect. The second one is chronic effect. Many health problems are long lasting but do not show up right after the exposure. The symptoms or disease happen long after exposure or from being exposed to small amounts of an agent for a long time. These delayed or long lasting problems are called chronic effects. For example, when a person breathes asbestos for a long period of time, it can cause lung cancer. Getting yourself pierced with infected needles can cause HIV infections. Hearing loss from working in a noisy facility or high blood pressure from job stress. These are all examples of chronic effects. The third one is local effect. A health effect is local when it only affects a certain part of your body which is exposed to any health hazard. For example, a broken toe, a cut finger or a burn. These are the examples of local effect. The fourth one is the systemic effect. A health effect is systemic when an agent enters into your body and causes damage to other parts of the body. A cut, for example, which gets infected and causes fever and other symptoms is systemic. Breathing a chemical that makes you feel high or dizzy may cause liver or kidney damage as well. So, if you are exposed to that chemical for a long period of time. So, even if you never have any acute or local effect, you can have systemic effects. So, dear learners, we have so far discussed what are health hazards, what are the different types of health hazards, what are the different modes by which harmful agents can enter into our body, and how these health hazards can affect us. Now we will discuss another important concept which is most commonly associated with the medical world, that is etiology. Etiology is the study of causes. A number of disciplines utilize etiology ranging from anthropology to physics, but it is most commonly associated with the medical world. In medical research, understanding the origins and causes of medical conditions is extremely important because etiology can be used to provide clues into methods of treatment which might be effective on certain diseases. In the case of an individual patient, understanding etiology can be extremely important as it may provide a vital piece of puzzle when it comes to treating a particular condition in that patient. Do you know the term for a disease for which the cause cannot be determined? It is said to be idiopathic, meaning that it has no known etiology. Idiopathic conditions can be very frustrating for physicians and patients alike, as the lack of an etiology can make it difficult to pin down the precise nature of a disease. Medical researchers, especially those who respond to epidemics, also rely heavily on etiology. Thus, etiology focuses on the cause of the disease. Generally, etiology of any disease can be either intrinsic, which means that which comes from within, or extrinsic, which means that it originates from the external factors, or it could be idiopathic, which means that the cause is unknown. Now again, another important thing to know is that etiology is not just disease specific but also person specific. Any particular cause or set of factors may lead to different illnesses being manifested in different individuals. Now let us look at another important concept in etiology, that is the chain of causation. The chain of infection or causation includes three factors that lead to infection: the etiologic agent, the method of transmission, and the host. The etiologic agent may be any microorganism that can cause infection. The pathogenicity of an agent is its ability to cause disease. Pathogenicity is further characterized by describing the organism's virulence and invasiveness. Virulence refers to the severity of infection, which can be expressed by describing the morbidity or incidence of disease and mortality, that is death rate of the infection. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the second wave that we experienced in India was highly virulent in nature. We had seen high incidence of the disease and high mortality rates as well. The method of transmission, or the second part, is the means by which the agent goes from the source to the host. The four major methods of transmission are by contact, by common vehicle, by air, or via a vector. In contact transmission, the agent is spread directly, indirectly, or by airborne droplets. An infectious agent may be transmitted by more than one route. For example, Salmonella may be transmitted by a common vehicle, that is food, or by contact spread, that is if a person comes in contact with a human carrier. The third in the chain of infections is the host. The organism may enter the host through the skin, through mucous membrane, lungs, gastrointestinal tract, or genitourinary tract, and it may enter fetus through the placenta. The resulting diseases often reflect the point of entrance, but not always. For example, meningococci that enters the host through mucous membrane may nonetheless cause meningitis, the symptoms of which are seen in the brain. So this was about etiology. Let us now look into what is epidemiology. Let us learn another important concept which in medical research is very important, and that is epidemiology. Do you know what it means? Epidemiologists try to follow some clues to determine the root cause of a particular health problem. Some of the pertinent questions which help epidemiologists in determining the causes are: who is sick? What symptoms does the sick person demonstrate? When was it discovered that the person got sick? And what were the factors surrounding the person's exposure? Once an epidemiologist gets answers to these questions, he or she can make specific recommendations to minimize the spread of a particular disease. Epidemiologists attempt to determine what factors are associated with diseases, or which are called the risk factors, and what factors may protect the people or animals against the diseases, which are called the protective factors. The science of epidemiology was first developed to discover and understand the possible causes of contagious diseases like smallpox, typhoid and polio among humans. It has expanded to include the study of factors associated with non-transmissible diseases like cancer and of poisonings caused by environmental agents. The epidemiological studies can never prove causation. That is, it cannot prove that a specific risk factor actually causes the disease being studied. Epidemiological evidence can only show you that this risk factor is associated or correlated with a higher incidence of disease in the population exposed to that particular risk factor. The epidemiological studies can be retrospective or prospective. Retrospective means whether the events have already happened, and prospective means whether the events may happen in future. The most common studies are the retrospective studies, which are also called the case control studies. The first step in an epidemiological study is to strictly determine exactly what requirements must be met in order to classify someone as a case. It is easy in instances where the outcome is seen, for example, whether a person is dead or alive. However, situations become very difficult when the experts disagree on the diagnosis of a disease. The strength of an epidemiological study depends on certain factors. The first one is the number of case and controls included in the study. The more individual cases that are included in the study, the more likely it is that a significant association will be found between the disease and a risk factor. Another important factor is determining what behavioral, environmental and health factors will actually be studied as possible risk or protective factors. If inappropriate factors are chosen and the real factors are missed, the study will not provide any useful information. Many a times it happens that a factor, say factor 1, which was chosen by the researcher, is not actually the risk factor, but is closely associated with the actual risk factor. We may name it as factor 2. In such cases, factor 1 is called the confounding factor. The possibility of finding confounding factors increases with the addition of more variables. Epidemiology, as we recognize it today, is an investigation of diseases and their etiology at the population level. Now let us look at what is an epidemic. We have all gone through, the entire world has gone through the pandemic of COVID-19. So it is a very important topic to be studied in these days. In epidemiology, an epidemic, epi means upon or above and demic means people. So in epidemiology, epidemic occurs when new cases of certain diseases in a given human population and during a given period substantially exceed what is expected based on the recent experiences. That is, the number of new cases in the population during a specified period of time, which is also called the incidence rate. An epizootic is the analogous circumstance within an animal population. For example, we have heard of bird flus and other such diseases which happen in the animals. These are called epizootics. We all are familiar with the recent COVID-19 pandemic. However, in recent usages, the disease is not required to be communicable. For example, includes cancer or heart disease. Another example includes the Black Death of the Middle Ages. Defining an epidemic can be subjective. depending on what is expected. An epidemic may be restricted to one locale. In that case, it is called an outbreak, or it may be more general. In such cases, it is called an epidemic, or it may even be global, then it is called a pandemic. Because it is based on what is expected or thought normal, a few cases of a very rare disease may be classified as an epidemic, while many cases of a common disease, for instance the common cold, will not be called an epidemic. The term syndemic refers to interacting epidemics that increase the health burden of affected populations. Social conditions that heighten the health risk of population, for example, poverty, discrimination and stigmatization and marginalization, by increasing stress, malnutrition, interpersonal violence and the experience of deprivation, increase the clustering of epidemic diseases and the likelihood of their interaction. Let us now look at what are the different factors that stimulate the rise in new epidemics. Some of the factors include alterations in agricultural practices and land uses. The second one is changes in society and human demographics. Because people are more clustered, the spread of epidemic increases. Poor population health, for example malnutrition or high prevalence of HIV, if the health of the population is poor, if they are undernourished, then they will definitely not have the required strength or the required immunity to fight against new diseases. Then hospitals and medical procedures, they are also very important because their timely action is what helps in controlling the spread of the epidemic. Evolution of pathogens with increased virulence or drug resistance is another cause of which stimulates rise in epidemics. Then contamination of water supplies and food sources, again we know that it is one of the leading cause of epidemics in several places. Another one is international travel. More and more travel has increased from one country to another. The spread of disease from one place to another has also increased. Then there is the failure of public health programs, then international trade and climate change. So these are some of the factors which lead to rise in new epidemics. Let us now understand what is meant by an epidemic model. An epidemic model is a simplified means of describing the transmission of communicable diseases through individuals. The ability to make predictions about diseases could enable scientists to evaluate inoculation or isolation plans that may have a significant effect on the mortality rate of a particular epidemic. The modeling of infectious diseases is a tool which has been used to study the mechanisms by which diseases spread, to predict the future course of an outbreak, and to evaluate strategies to control an epidemic. The first scientist who systematically tried to quantify the causes of death was John Graunt in 1662. The early account of mathematical modeling of the spread of disease was carried out in 1766 by Daniel Bernoulli. Following Bernoulli, other physicians also contributed to modern mathematical epidemiology. Among the most acclaimed of these were A. G. McKendrick and W. O. Kermack, whose paper, A Contribution to the Mathematical Theory of Epidemics, was published in 1927. A simple deterministic compartmental model was formulated in this particular paper, and the model was successful in predicting the behavior of outbreaks very similar to that observed in many recorded epidemics. Let us now look at the steps that are involved in investigation of an epidemic. Some of the steps involved in investigation of an epidemic are: first is the preparation of field work, second one is going for the investigation, third one is assembling appropriate supplies, for example the personal protective equipments, that is the PPE if they are needed. Fourth one is to familiarize yourself with a suspected disease. For this, you need to assemble useful references and investigation forms which may be created for the outbreak, know who you will be interviewing and where they will be, consultations, know your expected role in the field, and know who, if anyone, to report to when you arrive at your destination. Know who to call if you have questions, establish the existence of an outbreak. Regular analysis of surveillance data is done along with the preparation of more commonly calls from healthcare providers or citizens about cases, confidential morbidity reports, laboratory reporting, etc. Then the fifth point is verify the diagnosis. Sixth one is define and identify the cases and then establish a case definition. Now, case definition is a standard set of criteria for deciding whether an individual should be classified as having the health condition of interest or not. Case classifications are of different types. One is the confirmed case. A case that is classified as confirmed for reporting purposes may be epidemiologically linked cases or laboratory confirmed cases. Then there are the probable cases, a case that is classified as probable for reporting purposes. There may be supportive laboratory results or inconclusive laboratory results. Then the third one is the suspected cases, a case that is classified as suspected for reporting purposes. Some diseases require laboratory confirmation for diagnosis regardless of the clinical symptoms, and the others are diagnosed based on epidemiological data suspect cases, and then the suspect cases may be dropped when the case definition is tightened over the course of investigation. And the seventh step is to perform descriptive epidemiology. This stage needs the preparation of epidemic curve, which depicts time course of the outbreak by drawing a histogram of number of cases by their date of onset. It can also provide geographic extent of the problem or may demonstrate clusters or patterns that provide important etiological clues. Spot map useful for illustrating where cases exist or may have been exposed. From the information gathered in an investigation, epidemiologists can run analysis to test whether the hypotheses about the source of outbreak are true or not. When necessary, consider or redefine the hypothesis and execute additional studies and communicate the findings. So, dear learners, in this session, we have learned about health hazards, their types and measures. We also discussed about how harmful agents can enter our body. We also discussed the effect of health hazards. Further, we discussed about etiology and the chain of causation. We also learned about epidemiology, its classification, factors that lead to rise of new epidemics, and finally, the steps involved in investigation of epidemics. Hope you learned many new concepts from this discussion. Thank you.